Hello everyone, it is so good to see you. Nintendo dropped two separate updates for us today, one being an update to Mario Kart World, the other an overview trailer for Dragon Drive. Now, a lot of us have been concerned about Mario Kart World ever since they dropped that update in which we get the 3-lap track races a lot less commonly in Versus Online. And within the patch notes, this has in fact been addressed. But there's a lot more to it than just that. Let's go through some of these patch notes just real quick. So this is the version 1.2 update that just became available for download. To start us off, in Versus Race of single player mode, you can make it so that there are no other computers competing with you on the track. In Versus Race for single player and multiplayer, there's the option to have only mushrooms to the item rules. This feels like kind of a half step to the option where we could just select any items we wanted for Versus Races, but you know, at least we're getting somewhere. You can now choose to view replays after downloading ghost data in time trials, helpful for those hardcore speedrunners. You can now choose who to spectate in Knockout Tour and Balloon Battle when you're online, wireless play, and LAN play. This is one of those things that I was wondering why this wasn't just available from the start. You could only watch first place in a Knockout Tour if you were eliminated early, for example, but we now have the freedom to spectate whoever we want to, just like in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You can now see the waiting time for the next race or battle to start. When using camera play in multiplayer and online play, the game will now remember the camera cursor position and size until the player closes the game. This is something that obviously just affects people that are often using the camera in multiplayer, but it's still nice to have that kind of quality change. On the free roam map, when you gather all the P-switches, question mark panels, and peach medallions, the colors from the various numbers will now change. This is like really a minor, tiny step forward to be able to track how many of these we've collected. If you have all of them, the numbers will turn gold. If you don't, they will stay the same color. We still have no way of tracking all of these things. It's just a tiny little bit to tell you like, hey, you found all of these, now go find all the rest of the stuff. Really hope that somewhere down along the line there's going to be some way to track these things, or at least put a pin in the map. I would love to have pins to be able to keep track of certain things. The patch notes claim to have made the computer weaker in everything other than battle, and I'm still kind of wondering about this. I did a couple of knockout tours offline just to see what that would be like, but they're still pretty mean to me. I was still getting bamboozled with green shells in places I feel like I shouldn't have. And this Koopa Chupa, I could not catch him for the entire duration of this knockout tour, so more experiments need to be done, but it does seem like they're a little bit easier to deal with when you're not playing battle mode. The boomerang apparently got a bit of a nerf, and the homing is a bit weaker now. I got a hold of the boomerang a couple of times, and it really, honestly, I couldn't tell the difference because I'm pretty bad at using it anyway, so if you already found it difficult to hit anybody with the boomerang, it's probably not going to be any easier now. Decrease the probability of getting a triple dash mushroom when in a low position, and this is set whenever the item rules in a race are anything other than frantic. Just a bit of item balancing we're going to start seeing as these updates start to roll out. I think you'll start to see items like the golden mushroom prioritized when we're a bit farther in back now, or the triple mushrooms. That item has become a lot more valuable, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that they would prioritize over this. They also seem to increase the probability of the question mark block appearing as well. Kind of a weird choice. It's honestly not the most impactful item in a race. I would have loved it if the Kamek item would appear more often. I know there's a lot of people out there who still need to unlock certain characters, but the Kamek item was untouched in this update. They made it so that there's a spinning wheel animation for the players that press A button a little too early when starting a race. It notes that players will not lose speed when spinning wheels. This is more of a visual indication and tell, if anything. And finally, they increased the frequency of lap type courses appearing in the selection when choosing the next course in Versus Race and Wireless Races. I like how they put that one specifically at the very bottom of this section. But is it true? I tried to get online as soon as possible and it was still under maintenance, so I didn't get to do as much testing as I wanted, but I did do about 6 races, and of those 6, 4 of them did in fact have the option to choose a race that's not an intermission. And every other time when we happened to select random, it happened to pick one of the options that were already there and available to us. Of course, it's still far too early to tell exactly how much the probabilities have changed, but at my first initial impression, it does seem to be a little bit better. I still wish that this was arranged the same way that lobbies are when you're with friends. If you don't like any of the tracks that are recommended to you, you can just press plus and choose any 3-lap track, any intermission, it's all on the table. But alas, I assume that at some points, a lot more flexibility in choosing our tracks will come later down the line. But those are all the general updates. There's a whole other section that's mostly filled with specific or situational bugs, like using certain items in places, collision detection fixes. If you want to read all that, I will put the link to the patch notes in the description. But yeah, is Mario Kart World saved? Is it doomed to have broken versus online matches? We don't know. As of this moment, we're not really sure. We have to still test it out and see just exactly how much the frequency of these tracks are going to show up. But I think the important thing to take away from this is that Nintendo at least listened. They made an update without telling anybody, and then the next patch, they immediately claimed to have reversed it. I have a feeling that it's not going to be completely reversed, but at least we'll be able to have some variety again. But aside from that, we also got a lot of new information and an overview trailer of Dragon Drive. And this is the longest look of this game we've had thus far. This overview trailer went over main controls, gameplay actions, and interactions with other players. They made a pretty strong emphasis that this is going to be usable for your lap with the Joy-Con 2. I didn't really see it at first, but the more that I experiment with the mouse controls of the Joy-Con 2, I think this probably will be viable, especially considering the motions that are required to play Dragon Drive. They started off with some pretty basic instructions and controls. Passing, your 2-pointers, 3-pointers, and so on. But then we learned some new information, like if your team is holding the ball for more than 14 seconds, you'll be forced to drop it. And I don't know how to describe this, but I noticed that during the demonstration, despite using the mouse Joy-Con, the motion seemed more snappy and to the point than what I remember seeing in the first trailer. It showed some really cool things, like how when you're practicing, they will kind of show you a gauge that will determine how successful your shot will be. Something that I really appreciate is a lot of tactile communication. Despite the fact that, you're probably playing with people that you can't actually see, you can still wave your hands for gestures, you can clap to cheer your friends on or give them a high five. And I just appreciate how that can really immerse somebody into the gameplay. You're really encouraged to just slam into your opponents and get in their way to prevent them from scoring. There are 3 types of players. There's the guards who are agile and have better speed, the centers who are more defensive and can get more height, and the forwards who are the balanced all-rounders. The ramps here encourage you to jump and get trick shots off of them. You can do flips and spins and bunny hops. It really does feel like this is going to be a bit more technical than we initially thought. You can lift one Joy-Con and get a little bit extra height when you want to guard. I feel like it's little things like this that are going to give this game the kind of personality that it really does need. And there's multiplayer lobbies set up in what they like to call parks. And since they can accommodate 12 people total, there is room for 2 games to be played at the same time, with 2 3v3s. There's also, of course, friend parks to set up with people that you know, the option to have room codes, you can do mini games between matches, and I'm sure more stuff that we're going to be seeing very soon. At the end of the trailer, they also announced a demo is coming. The Global Jam demo will be available on August 9th and August 10th during certain time periods. You can pre-order and download the demo right now. I know there were a lot of people that just weren't sure about this game at first, if it was going to be enough content for them, or if this was going to be like another demo for the mouse controls. It is just $20, so I can't expect it's going to have a whole lot of content on release. But at that price point and seeing an actual overview trailer for this game, I'm more inclined to at least try it out. I don't think that at this point we can realistically expect a game that's the equivalent of ARMS, where that game was a showcase for the separate Joy-Con. It really does feel like all the little bits we saw here was more or less the entirety of the game. This will end up being the first big dedicated mouse control showcase for the system as an actual game, as opposed to Welcome Tour, so I'm hoping it makes a positive impression. We'll be sure to share various thoughts from the team once the demo goes live. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like what you saw, be sure to subscribe to GVG for news, updates, discussions, and more. Take care everyone, till we meet again.